Hey biologists, this is Dr. V reporting from Costa Rica in Dominical. This is a great surfing beach. As you can see, it's a beautiful place. Come enjoy the beach, go surfing, chill out, spend some time enjoying the jungle animals. It seems like a pretty pristine beach, but when you look closely, it's really not. You don't see a lot of macroplastics like this bottle. We found this on the shore. This is what we think about when we think about plastics in the ocean. But what's really the problem is these plastics, these macroplastics, break up into what's called microplastics. And I picked up some plastic on the beach here that it's really hard to see when you just take a cursory look. This is under ½ a centimeter, and this is what marine animals eat. And there's even tinier plastics that are closer to the size of a grain of sand that you need a microscope to see. This here is called a nurdle, and it's what a lot of the injection molded plastics things we buy at like Target and the grocery store are made of. So these nurdles sometimes break off container ships. The metal container on the container ship breaks off the ship, and then the whole ocean gets full of these nurdles. They're very common as a form of beach micro pollution. And the problem with these microplastics, this size and smaller, is they become part of the food chain. Let's walk over here to my sandboard and let's talk about plankton for a moment. Plankton is both phytoplankton, it's tiny little animals that you need a microscope to see, that are phytoplankton, plants, zooplankton, animals. And it's those plankton that take up the microplastics, things smaller than what's in my hand here. And that plankton gets eaten by what we call nectin. Now the difference between plankton and nectin is plankton just gets floated around in the ocean and goes wherever the waves go. Nectin is the bigger stuff that has a sense of its own destiny and can swim where it wants to go. So nectin, which includes smaller fish, eat the plankton, and they accumulate all the plastic that's in the plankton. And then the bigger fish, which are also nectin, eat the smaller fish and get all the plastic. Remember, the arrows in a food web show the direction the energy is going. In this case, they also show the direction the plastic is going, because the plastic is part of what the organisms are eating. And then the plastic gets into the big fish, and if you're eating tuna or mahi-mahi or some delicious fish dinner here on the beach or at home, humans are the next step on this food web or food chain. And so humans are eating this plastic as well. Now this is plastic we can see. I also talked about microscopic plastic. When I go swimming in the ocean, I'm putting plastic in the ocean because my swim trunks here are made out of plastic. They're not a natural material, and so they're little tiny fibers, microfibers, that go into the ocean every time I go swimming, and those get part of the food chain as well. Even if you're a vegetarian and you don't eat fish or a vegan, you're probably still eating plastic if you eat sea salt, because the very tiny plastic fibers and microplastics that get beat up in the ocean, they become part of the sea salt. And if you eat sea salt, you're probably eating microplastics. So plastics are a big problem here in the ocean food chain. They're also a problem in freshwater food chains. The same kinds of things go on. The plastic gets in the plankton, the small animals and plants, goes to the smaller fish, the larger fish, and then we eat it. Or things like loons or seabirds or great blue herons, ibises, they eat the fish and they get plastic in them. So think about plastics both in freshwater and saltwater ecosystems when you use them, and dispose of them properly. If you've been told, to skip the straw, yes, please, because straws, when they get to the ocean or a lake, they get beat up in tiny, tiny little pieces very easily and become microplastics very quickly. So even though we don't see straws on this beach, they're here as tiny little pieces. Thanks for listening. This is Dr. B in Dominical, Costa Rica, talking about microplastics in the ocean and freshwater food webs.